Hello, everybody. Today, our guest is Colleen Carswell. She is a secular homeschooling mom of four who educates parents on how to travel more affordably and conveniently by hotel so we can collectively raise a more globally conscious future generation. Colleen is no stranger to the juggle bus and finding ways to integrate business, homeschooling, travel, and family, even going as far as trading in the traditional 9 to 5 work grind for the more aligned 5 to 9 morning shift instead. As a business strategist, Colleen integrates systems and processes into both her professional life and ever-evolving landscape of motherhood. Welcome, Colleen.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thanks for joining us. So, as I ask everybody, what is your definition of balance?
Yeah. So I think I integrate a lot in my life in terms of, like you just shared, in terms of traveling and
Mm,
homeschooling and owning my own businesses. And so for me, sometimes when that question's asked, I think about like the scale where it's like, okay, are we balancing work and personal
mm,
life? And then
mhm,
even that, how can we quantify that even more in terms of like time and time on both sides where we're really living into that. So
mhm,
I like to more think about it in terms of like the energy and what's really energizing and fueling me versus what's draining and depleting me, and making sure that those are in alignment versus like, because there's going to be seasons where I'm working more and I'm living more into the
mm,
mompreneur life, and there's going to be seasons where I'm more in the homeschooling realm and we're traveling a lot more. So just making sure no matter what season I'm in, I'm being energized and fueled by the activities that I'm doing versus drained.
mm. That's awesome. And the crazy thing is right now, before you even said the energies, I was thinking about how my own definition of balance has been changing recently to reflect more of the energy piece. So when you said it, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like she read my mind. That was literally the thought that had popped into my head. And I don't know if you're familiar with Kate Northrup, but she is an author and she's written a few books, but one of them that I'm currently reading is called Do Less. And it's
Mhm.
really focused on paying attention to your cycles, the cycles of the moon, the cycles of the seasons, and really paying attention to your energies in each of those areas and how that, well, for me, I'm thinking how that is more reflective of balance for me than trying to balance specific areas of life.
Right. I love that. So what was the name of that book?
Do less,
Okay. Yeah,
like
that
Kate
that seems very
Northrup.
much in alignment with something I would like to read. So I will be I
Mm.
will be getting that after this.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I am I was listening to one of your TikTok videos and you were talking about reading and you go, well, by reading I mean listening to audiobook. So I've been listening to the audiobook, not
Yes.
actually reading.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. As a busy mom, it can be difficult to fit in the actual reading. So and I love, you know, reading books, but for me to get that in, I need to be able to listen because I can
Yeah.
do that while I'm, putting a kid to bed or things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Do tend to listen to audiobooks like I share a lot. And then I'd like to have the hard copy though, just to like,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it's books that are like informative fiction, self-help. I just like to
Mm-hmm.
highlight things, like just listen to it in an audiobook and then go to my book and like highlight, because then I can
Yeah.
have it to go back to, because I need that reminder of what I found, like was a key takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
And then the funny thing, like the only time I've really read recently is I was on a Frontier flight and I did not realize, and I was like, oh, I'm going to get so much done in work because I don't have the kids. And I didn't realize I don't have Wi-Fi on their planes. So
Oh,
luckily I had a book, and it like I got through like 100 pages with it. I was like, oh,
oh
this
wow.
is what this feels like.
Yeah.
But only reason I did it was because I literally I had the time and I had no connection to the outside world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How funny. I will actually physically read if my husband our family has a ranch that's about 80 miles outside from where our home is. So if we're going there, driving there, the service isn't that great. So that I will usually read during that time. So that's the nice part of of having to travel that way, but
Yeah.
that's really the only time.
The
Yeah.
car is a little difficult too to read in just because I get
Mm,
a little sick, but I do love the like audiobooks I have found, like long trips. Like I'm getting ready to go with just me and the kids next week, travel down to Florida, which is about a 9 hour drive plus all the
okay.
stops of like 15 hours. But
Yeah.
I love, like I can drive a really long distance if I have a great book. So
Oh
I'm
yeah.
actually, and I look forward to it. I look forward to
Hmm.
having time to be able to listen to books and they can just do their
Yes.
thing in the back. You know, it is what it is.
Uh-huh. I'm the same way. I'm the same way. Especially when kids are usually entertaining themselves in some way. They're not listening to our music. So might as well listen to an audiobook. Yeah. So one of the things that we were talking about before we started recording was aphantasia and how we both share this. And so why don't you go ahead and talk about that?
Yeah, I love this because like as you were sharing before as well, like I don't know that I'm very vocal about it on TikTok as of about a year ago. It's gotten a lot of interest, a lot of people commenting and wanting to talk more about it on the platform, but I don't know that
Mm,
I've ever actually had like a face-to-face conversation about it with
yeah.
anybody. So when you said that, I was like, oh, because it's just not something that happens because it's such a small subset. But basically,
Yeah.
what aphantasia is, it's the inability to form mental imagery. So, like when you hear people say, imagine yourself on the beach and you're watching a
Hmm.
sunrise, for people who have aphantasia, that's not something that we are able to do. It's not, we
Yeah.
don't actually visually, mentally think of a sunset in the same way or sunrise in the same way that other people do.
Hmm.
And it's just been, I don't think that I realized I had it until I don't know, probably around 30 or so is what I'm thinking. So just about 7 years or so that I realized that that was what was going on. And until then, I just thought these are just figure of speeches. Like that's just
Yes.
what people are saying. And I talk about when I listen to audiobooks or I read a book, especially
Hmm.
fiction, I get to the end of the book and I don't even know what any of the characters look like because I never formed that mental imagery piece of it. Whereas someone like my sister who reads like 150 books a year, it's a very different experience for her
Mm,
than it is for me. So it's just really exciting to be able to have a conversation with
yes.
somebody who has a similar experience through life because I think what happens so often, not just with aphantasia, but through this journey of sharing that this is part of my
Hmm.
story, I've learned so much about the different ways people think, not just like what they're thinking about, but literally the way
Hmm.
that their brain function is
Yeah.
really fascinating to learn because I posted too, and I even learned about my husband and myself. He was sharing one day that he could hear in his mind, and he's said this before, and I just like let it go in and out, right? I didn't make anything of it, and then one day I was just like, "What do you mean when you say you can hear voices in your
Hmm.
mind?" He's like, "You know, I know what my mom's voice sounds like. I know what Morgan Freeman's voice sounds like. I literally hear their voices in my head
Yeah.
when I'm thinking of them. And that's not at all how my brain works. And that just was so
Mm,
mind blowing to me. And so I did a TikTok video on that and I got a lot of feedback. And it's not just that like some people can hear in their own voice. Some people just have thoughts. Some
hmm.
people hear in different accents. Some people have like entire conversations with a whole room of people going on. Like it is fascinating to say the things like to figure out the way that people's brains are working
Oh
that we
yeah.
didn't even know were working so differently in the first place.
Hmm. Yeah. Especially because those things are usually often talked about in terms of this is the norm
Yeah.
instead of, and a lot of people don't fall within the norm.
Yeah.
And so when we're only talking about things in the norm, people do get left out.
Hmm.
And then they either don't say anything or they just uh, mask by,
Yeah.
just try and go along as if, things are working great. I do know what you mean because that was me. When
Yeah.
people would talk about, so if you're still kind of confused, like, what do you mean by aphantasia? What do you mean by being able to not to be able to have a mental image versus being able to see that mental image? Just as long as you're not driving, just pause for a minute, close your eyes, do a deep breath and exhale, and then picture sitting at the beach. Do you, what do you see? Do you see anything? Can you see the ocean, the sand? What are you wearing? Now you can open your eyes. Were you able to see an image? How clear was that image? So when someone is unable to form that image or see the image or the picture, they can have what's called aphantasia. And for me, the way that I see things is I'm not seeing them. It's more I feel that the essence. That's the only way I can describe it. Is I just feel what I would likely feel if I was at the beach, but I'm not seeing an image. It's a feeling and a knowing, if that makes sense. What is it like for you, Colleen?
That's exactly it. And it's not even feeling in the real concept of the way people, I think, interpret the word feeling. Because I think too, for a lot of people, like they can mentally feel things as well, as what I've learned. And that's not something, and when we talk about aphantasia and this idea of mental imagery, this idea of hearing your mind, like it's all in a spectrum. It's like it's not that you're either one or the other. It's you start at aphantasia and then you go along this spectrum to, I forget what it's on the other end, hyper something. But people fall at all different points, which is really fascinating. But yeah, when you say, like, I always say I have a really great intuition because I'm so tapped into that constant state of feeling and knowing in that way. Like I don't have the mental imagery piece to kind of lean on or to distract. It's just a straight knowing. So yeah, and it's even hard when I sometimes try to describe things to people in some of my videos. It's like, I don't even know how to describe this because I don't know. You think about it so much differently than the way that I think about it. So even having those conversations in terms of being able to describe it is really difficult because you start to realize the words that you use, the way that you think about things are so different from everybody else. We all are. I think that's just the biggest thing is that you learn that people's perspectives and perceptions of things are so vastly different when we start having these conversations. Yeah.
And that's important to realize, especially as a mom and having multiple people within your household. I mean, like you said, there are still things that you just learned about your husband in terms of him being able to like actually hear people's voices. I can't hear, I just have the thoughts.
Yeah.
Even in songs, it's just the lyrics, but I could do it in the rhythm, but I'm not hearing the music.
Yes, same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and
that's
funny too. Like, and I learned that about my husband. And then I also we like to listen to books with the kids too, like children's books. And we were listening to, what was it? Like a Percy Jackson book or something. Like I like fantasy. But I realized how differently I interpret books than my children do. One of my children might have aphantasia, we're still feeling that out, but one is definitely like very visual and very creative, and like his mind's just always going. And he was scared for so it came to this part where it was talking about the Minotaur, and it was like just this really scary scene. And in my mind, I'm just like la la la, just words. Like I'm just listening to a story. But in his mind, he's actually building out this scene and being able to visualize it, which you just don't realize the different capacities in which our brains work until you're in that. And had I not known this, like if this had happened before I even knew aphantasia was a thing, I would just be like, why is he so scared? Like it's just a story. But now that I know like how differently our brains work, I constantly have to think about, is this going to be perceived differently for him or for any other person than it is for me? Which is just an interesting way to do that now.
And it also makes sense for me in terms of how people can like certain books when books really describe everything, like they're very detailed. That's annoying to me because for me, it's just like, why are we wasting time here? Okay, cool that I am getting the scenery, but I can't picture that. So that's why it's annoying to me versus the person who can actually see things as a movie playing in front of them. That's helpful for them. Like they can actually see that image. And I had a friend in childhood who loved reading books, and we usually liked the same books, but there was a series that I had tried to read, I think, what is it called? They're really big books. They have crowns on them. Someone knows what I'm talking about. Um, I just remember like one's a blue one and I think it has a crown and they're in like jewel tones, the title. But the what's it called? I could never get into it.
Yeah.
It's a show too. Outlander. There you go.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The Outlander series. And I could never get into it because it was really slow and they were just describing a lot of things, describing the characters, and I can't picture that.
Right.
My memory is not in images, it's in the knowing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was able to pick up, I can't see the colors. I just know that they were those colors, if that makes sense.
Yeah. To me it does. To me it does,
Yeah.
but for other people listening might be like, what are these people even talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I'm the same way when I'm reading. Like it's anything descriptive, anything like visually character development. I'm just like skip. Like I just skim it all. I'm like, okay, get me back to the story because I don't need this. I don't know what's happening with this. And a lot of that, you know, you could say, well, that's why you don't know what the characters look like because you skim over it. But it's been so much a part of my life for so long in terms of like, all right, I guess we're just reading this, that I've just learned how to do things more efficiently that better suit like how my mind works.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's why I am one of the people who I do enjoy watching the movie after. I don't like before. I do like it after reading the book, because I don't have that picture anyways.
Yeah.
So that's helpful.
Yeah, I talk to people about that a lot, especially my family. And like, they're like, well, they just didn't do this the way that I thought that it, like, it's not the same. The person doesn't look the same as I envision them. I thank God that now I know what they look like because I had no idea. I love being able to have a fancy look to it.
Yes, yes. So how has aphantasia impacted your life, if anything? Because I know you mentioned you didn't realize that this was something in terms of what it was, the specific name, until your 30s. I actually just recently heard about it within the last year because it was talked about in a Psychology Today magazine. But other than that, I hadn't heard of this.
Yeah.
But it would be frustrating when I'm doing because a lot of the self-improvement things that I do, a lot of them have guided meditations and things or just mental imagery things that I can't necessarily do specifically.
Right.
And I always thought, man, why can't I get there? Why can't I pick up this mental image? And I was looking at it as there must be something wrong with me because I cannot visualize this. I need to be trying harder. I need to, and that's kind of how I've noticed it impacting me. And there are other ways too, but back to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I resonate with that so much. It's like before I even knew it was a thing. And even after, sometimes you're like, maybe I could just trick my brain into knowing how to do this thing that it hasn't been able to do for 37 years. But it's like, I'll just like close my eyes, squint really hard, open my eyes, try to like figure out all the ways to make this happen. It just doesn't happen. But with meditation, that's one of the things. It's like, I always tell people I'm really great at clearing my mind. I'm not so great at like the visualization piece. So I don't really recall beforehand, but even now, like when coaches start talking about like visualize this, and it's like a part of me, I try not to tap into that part, but a part of me is just like so frustrated. I'm like, don't you know I can't do that part? And like if the whole exercise and activity relates to like envision yourself in the future, what are you wearing? How are you walking? What are you doing? Like I'm not able to do that. Like I could sit there and write it down. That would be an activity I could do, but I can't actually visualize it. So I resonate with that in that way. Another way is I find, and this has been kind of hit or miss in terms of when I poll on TikTok, is I find that I personally take a lot of pictures because I can't envision my kids' faces. I don't know what they look like. And I joke too sometimes, and I don't know if it's just me. In this way, but like when I travel for an extended period of time, even like just a week, and I come back, like my kids' faces still surprise me. And I don't like, it's just because I haven't been able to visually see them unless I'm scrolling through my phone looking at pictures, they still surprise me. which is both good and bad. But I take a lot of pictures because I want to remember them at every phase. And it kind of helps
Mm-hmm.
put me back in that space. I was talking to my new bonus sister, and she was like, for me, I can close my eyes and I'm there. Like I am living that moment. I'm
Mm,
just like taken away into that time. And for that's
yeah.
not how that works for me. And so
Mm-hmm.
having lots of pictures, like to fully encapsulate an entire
Yeah.
like time, just like maybe an hour of time helps me to really get into that moment again.
Mm-hmm.
um I'm trying to think of the other ways that it's really impacted. I think those are two of the really the key ways. I mean, and the other thing too is because our minds work so differently, I do find, and this isn't true of everybody with aphantasia, but I personally find like I am very that's for my job, like I'm very systematic, I'm very logical,
Mm,
I'm very like
yeah.
there's no like, it's not that I'm not creative. It's a different type of creativity,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just very like, yeah, analytical. Like that's just how my brain works. It's like a computer in that way. I can
Yeah.
just cut through the noise and just get things done really quickly and in efficient manners. And I don't know if that's relatable, but I have read a few articles where it does say that there might be some correlation. And that's the other thing with aphantasia is there's really not a whole lot of research or studies
Yeah.
done around it so far.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited for like what you had shared, that was an article that was out, because the more
Mm-hmm.
that we talk about it, the more we can learn about it and really be able to understand it even better than
Yeah.
what we do.
Mm-hmm. And because the article that you had talked about, I think in one of your TikToks, it said only 3% of people have aphantasia. And it was really low also in that Psychology Today. And so that's going to be another reason why it's probably not going to be talked about a lot, because it affects so few of the population. But that's not to say that there's variances between, there's people who can literally see movies playing in their head. They can see that versus someone who just can see the picture, like just maybe a still picture. Um, so it's going to vary.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, part of me always wonders, is it that it's only 3%, or is it that nobody's really talked about it up until
Mm-hmm.
the recent years? And
Yeah.
if we continue talking about it, will we find that there's actually more people, or that the spectrum looks a lot differently than what we actually think that it does? So I'm hopeful that more studies will come out about it.
Yes, yes. So what has helped me in recognizing that this is just a part of who I am and that there isn't anything wrong with me. I just see things different. It's funny. I don't see it at all. But the it has helped me even in those meditations or guided experiences. I don't focus on it as much in terms of I'm not beating myself up about the fact that I can't actually see, because there's other things that I can do that maybe other people can't. Like I'm really good in the feeling. I can feel things really strongly. I might not be able to see them, but I can feel them really strongly. So if, for example, if my kid is playing on something and it might be looks a little bit dangerous, I might, and I can't say it any other way, but I can play it in my head as if that danger thing happened, I can feel what I would feel if they actually got hurt. I
Mhm.
can't see it as in I saw this and I'm scared. It's just, I even get chills if I'm seeing them playing something dangerous, and I get this chill or like visceral reaction as if it happened, but it's not an image, it's a
Right.
feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so that's how that is.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way. And another thing that I was thinking about, it, it, I don't know how to really bridge into this, but it helps me put things into perspective, because we don't know what we don't know. And it's like
Mhm.
when I'm always behind my camera, right? I'm always on my phone. I'm always taking pictures. And a lot of people might look at that and say, you really just need to be in the moment. Like you really just need to like put your camera down and not take so many pictures because like life is happening. And I do try to balance that out, but
Mhm.
also that's my way to remember my kids and to remember my
Yeah.
life in a way that I don't have the capability to do with
Mhm.
just my mind and how it works. So I think it's a good reminder in anything in life to understand. I always try to put that lens on of like, there
Yeah.
might be something here I'm not understanding. There might be something here that I don't know. Just trying to take away that judgment of different things that are sometimes just, they just naturally come to us. Because I've heard that all the time. Like, you just need to be away from your phone. You need, not necessarily directed at me, but just in life in general. Like,
Mm-hmm.
out from behind the phone. I love that I have a phone in my hand at all times now that I can take pictures, because I didn't have that growing up. And you know what
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember? You know what I can't visualize? Any of my childhood. So now I can
Yeah.
actually go back and I know what happened on my wedding. I know, like, I can be in the room when I had my babies. Like, all these different things I
Yeah.
wouldn't have been able to do if that technology didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And as far as like the childhood memories, I don't have the memories. Again, we've been talking about, I don't
Yeah.
see it, but I know that they happened. I know we would go to Disneyland, every other summer for so long and visit family in California. I know that. I
Yeah.
can see pictures. I remember that we went, but I don't have the memories of, oh my gosh, it was amazing. And I just know it was fun. I can't picture Disneyland or the beach trip or anything like that. And family gatherings, I know that they happened, but I don't picture them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, same. Yeah, it's again going back to that knowing, like, I know in facts. I actually don't remember my childhood even in the knowing sense. Like, the only thing I really know is like, I was one of three girls. My dad was a
Hmm.
doctor. We lived in a certain place. Like, I know those things,
Hmm.
but there's really no emotional attachment because I don't have those autobiographical memories associated with things. And that's also, I mean, that's a whole other rabbit hole to go down, but that's also part, like, most people, with aphantasia don't always have that piece, but many do, where they don't actually have the memory component, the autobiographical memory component. But yeah, the things that I do remember or can recall, I don't even like to use the word remember because I don't think it holds the same connotation for me as it does for
Yeah.
other people. But the things that I
Hmm.
recall are very fact based. Like, it's like, I
Yes.
know them. But
Uh-huh.
it's like recalling a book, like that you read like
Yes.
12 years ago. Like, that's
Hmm.
how that part of it.
Yes. It's all in the thoughts.
Yeah.
Like I can pull up just that I know it.
Mhm.
There's
Yeah.
no other way for me to explain it. Like I can recall pieces of information.
Yeah.
I can recall what people tell me.
Yeah.
And that makes so much sense of why I struggle with I like if not that I'm really good with faces, I'm horrible with names, but I
Same.
remember people like I know them. One thing in that article that it mentioned was that people with aphantasia, although they can't bring up mental images, oftentimes their dreams are very vivid.
Yeah. Isn't that wild?
Are your
Yeah.
dream mine can be crazy.
Yeah.
Like
So,
very vivid, yes, but I can't do that on my own. So
yeah.
weird, right?
Especially, it is weird, especially when I'm pregnant. My dreams are like on fire. Like, they're the wildest of the wild. And that's also like a really big topic of conversation. That's probably one of the most asked questions when I talk about
Mm,
aphantasia is like, but do you dream? And yes, I don't remember my dreams afterwards. Like, I wake up, no, like, it's that knowing again. Like, I wake up, some
mm,
people with aphantasia are different. They can recall their dreams. I don't typically. But I know that they were very vivid. I know that they were very, like, elaborate. I know that they were very creative. Which is just so strange. I mean, from what I've gathered, is two different parts of the brain. It's just your brain works differently in these capacities. But that's what I've asked two people. I'm like,
mhm.
so is like the way that you envision, the way that you're mentally imagining things, is that similar to a dream? But even that question doesn't work because maybe we're all dreaming differently. Maybe how our dreams
Yes.
are very different. So
Hmm.
just having the conversations is both really enlightening and also somewhat frustrating because we can't really
Yes.
have those conversations without knowing the variables of the other person.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I know we could probably spend the rest of our time talking about this, but you are also an expert in helping families be able to travel on a budget and I guess just travel more in general, right?
Yeah.
Through hotels.
Yes.
So tell me more about that.
Yeah, so specifically hotels, because that's my background. I was a director of sales for resorts and hotels.
Mm,
I've been in hospital and cruise ships. I've been in hospitality since 2007, so 16 years. Um, So that's really what I love is hotels. And I like to take my knowledge of hotels and my knowledge of hotel sales and help families travel more affordably and conveniently. So there's a lot of different ways to be able to do that. So I share a lot about that. I educate a lot about that. I help people kind of bust through some myths in terms of like booking early doesn't mean you're going to save more money. Actually, if you book later, it's not the same for flights. It's not the same thing for the airline industry. But if you book closer to, typically you're going to save more money. And I go into all these different tips on that. Booking a hotel with a kitchen isn't going to save you money. I know a lot of people book a hotel with a kitchen. They're like, I'm going to save so much money because I'll be able to cook my food. But what you're not factoring in is the fact that that hotel room costs more than a hotel room that maybe just has a fridge and a microwave. So those costs aren't really apples to apples in that sense. So I help people be able to, I have like menus where I help people be able to just use a fridge and a microwave in the same capacity that they would with the full kitchen so that they can really save money. Because as a family of 6, I know how expensive it can be to travel, not just the lodging, but everything else that's involved with it. And I really do believe strongly that the more that we can expose our children to traveling experiences and different cultures and beliefs, even if it's just domestically, that they're going to have broader perspectives of the world. Because there's these two, community is this dichotomy of, on one hand, it can be a great unifier. It feels really good and comfortable and supportive and aligned to find your people. But on the other hand, if you're only ever with your people, you forget that there's a vastness of humanity that exists on the other side of that. And so it's just really making sure that we're able to experience the world in its fullness and finding ways to help parents do that, because it's already so prohibitive with costs, with how the world caters to families traveling. I mean, we've heard it all, for many, many months now about the airlines and all these different things in terms of, making more difficult for families to travel and for kids to travel, versus I would love to have, like, my biggest hope would be that, instead of saying, okay, here's some loud grown humans who are saying, I don't want kids to travel. What if an airline, like just one airline, catered directly to families? Like, how much would us moms love that? Like, and you're not only, I talk a lot about building multi-generational brand fans, because not only are you just serving that one person, you're serving an entire line, like generations of people. If you go on this vacation, me as a mom with my kids, and I have a stellar time, they're going to have a stellar time. If they have a stellar time, then that's the airline that they're going to want to travel, and so on and so forth. Same with hotels. I think if some hotel or some airline agency was like, nope, we're going to switch it up. We're going to go completely differently. And we're going to focus on serving the families in the best way that we possibly can. Not only is that great for families, but that's also just really smart business. So I'm hopeful that one day we're going to get there. We're not there yet, but I'm hopeful.
I mean, you already see this, model at resort type, what is it called? What's coming up for me is like Cancun, in Mexico. They have different hotels, different resorts that you can go to that cater to families or cater to couples or cater to singles. They cater, and, families will go to the ones that their kids are also going to have a great time.
Right.
And that works.
Yeah.
That's why there's Nickelodeon and Disney cruises and all of the specific types of hotels that are based on these characters.
Right.
Because they are bringing in the families.
Yeah.
And the kids. And if airlines did that too, I'm sure a lot of families would also be using those same airlines.
Right. And it's like, even with the airlines, but also with hotels, like you find them in like tourist destination areas for the most part. If I could just travel across the country and there'd be like a Marriott, how Marriott has like different brands underneath it. You have all the different types of hotels. Like if they just had one that was was family focused, and you could find it anywhere you went. Same with Hilton. Like they all had a family focused hotel brand. What a difference that would be. To be able to, it's like, I've shown up with my 4 kids before at a hotel, and we have the room that can accommodate 6 people, but I still feel like that judgment, and that, like, I've been on that side of things to know that that is what's coming off the other side of the counter. Like, that's not in my head. I know that there is the stigma for families traveling in the hotel industry. So it's like, I've been on that side. If we could just have, let's start small. Let's just start with one brand in terms of being able to really cater to families wherever they are. Like wherever you go, you know, you're going to have this whatever, this residence inn, but not a residence inn, you know?
Yes, yes. So what are some of those, the most common myths that you find people spreading around in terms of traveling in hotels?
Yeah. So one of the common myths is kind of relatable, but really the whole reason I started this was, I think it was the pandemic, and we decided that we wanted to travel more. And like the association in my mind was travel more equals RV. Like that's how you full-time travel. And it just like, we tried to toy with that idea. We tried to get behind investing all this money into a thing that we didn't even know if we were going to love or not. And then that idea and the fact that just like the whole culture behind RVing is so intimidating to me, like just that whole concept. So I wanted people to know there's a different way, and there's actually a more affordable way. Like RVing is great and it is affordable on its own, like when you go and you park, but you don't take into fact the cost of the RV, the cost of the maintenance, the cost of the parking when you're not on the road. So hotels are actually a more affordable option if you're not traveling 24/7. So we don't do full-time traveling. We just do really frequent traveling. We do probably about a quarter to a third of the year we're on the road traveling by hotel.
Okay.
And that's more affordable to do it that way versus in an RV. The other thing I like to educate people on is, you know, sometimes there's this stigma in the hotel industry and with people of booking through an OTA or an online third party agency. So things like Priceline or Trivago, you can actually get some really great deals, but you have to understand how the system works in order to have the right expectations when you get there. It's because you have to treat it as a third party that it is. It would be just like booking through a vacation agent. What's that? Travel agent. Just like booking through a travel agent. In the sense that you're working through that person. If you're booking through the online third party travel agent and something goes wrong at the hotel, you have to go through the third party. So if I go to a hotel and there's an issue with my reservation, I can't take it to the front desk typically. I would need to go through the third party. And it works really, really great as long as you know that those are the rules. But that's
good to know, because I've had an experience, not for me that something had gone wrong, but I was waiting to be checked in, and someone else was having an episode where they were very upset because the hotel wasn't writing quote unquote they're wrong, when in fact it was actually because they went through an OTA. I don't know which one, but those things happen, you know, overbookings happen. And if you're going through the OTA, like you said, like Priceline or Expedia, things like that, those things can happen.
Yeah.
But it's not the hotels. What you're saying, it's not the hotel's thing to manage. It's
right.
You have to manage through the OTA.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, there are sometimes things like I'll go up, if I have an issue, I'll go up to the front desk and I'll be very clear of like, I know I booked through Priceline. Here's the issue that I'm having. Is this better handled through the hotel, or should I go through Priceline? And most of the times they'll say go through Priceline. And then what happens is Priceline contacts the hotel directly and resolves the issue on the back end versus me being the one. So it's just having those expectations so you can avoid any frustrations that come along with it, because it does add another layer. But if your goal is to save money, which a lot of families it is, you can get some really great deals. Like I've saved up to 60% on hotels just from booking with Priceline's mystery deals. I think it's called mystery deals at Priceline, but you have to understand how they work. And that's part of the problem. A lot of times when I share with my hotel industry friends, like, this is what I do, and this is what I educate them on, they're like, why would you ever tell someone to book through an OTA? And it's like, I don't want them to just book through. I want them to understand it so that the relationship between the hotel and the guest, because the OTAs exist. Like, and the reason that a hotel is on an OTA site is because the hotel wanted to get that revenue from the OTA site. So it is not the customers. That's not on the onus of the customer. That is, that's the hotel wanting to make money.
Yeah.
So I just try to explain that as best I can, because I want to make sure that both sides are really educated so that relationship can operate better.
Yeah. And when you said that mystery deal, I think it's Hotwire. They have something similar to where they give you, it's this star hotel And I
Mhm.
almost actually did a booking like that for this week or next weekend. We're going on a soccer tournament thing.
Yeah.
So we had to get a hotel. But the catch for that was I wasn't able to pick the bed count.
Yeah.
And my husband and I were, no, we need to pick the bed count. We need 2 beds, not 1 king. We need 2 queens because of our family. And so the $20-$30 a night we would save was worth for us to be able to pick the bed count.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes they do allow bed counts, sometimes they don't. It just
Mm-hmm.
depends on the hotel and the different OTAs.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just that's how they're able to offer those lower prices. But there are ways to work around being able. A lot of times people don't want to book the mystery deals because they're like, I don't even know where I'm staying. Like, cool, it's a 4-star, but I don't know anything about this hotel. But there are ways to find out what hotel you're staying at. And I
Oh, I
have
can,
all sorts of
yeah.
videos on
I was
that.
like, I can usually tell which one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Only because I'm pulling up different tabs of different sites and comparing and location, and it is a
Right.
process. It takes a little bit more of your time,
Yeah.
but there are ways, especially if it's not a heavy hotel area, you can pinpoint.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Actually, my husband or I did it for it wasn't our honeymoon. We haven't technically gone on our honeymoon as in honeymoon week-long vacation somewhere exotic. We went to in Texas. One of the beaches is Port Aransas. So we went there for I think 2 nights. And I found this resort stay, and it was in the off season, but it was a really good deal, and it was through one of those surprise. I was
Yeah.
able to narrow it down. I was pretty confident that that was what it was. And it was the same one, because what I found was that was the only hotel in the area that had a conference center, like a big conference center to host like big conferences, not
Yeah.
just a small conference room. So I knew, oh, this must be this hotel. And it was, or resort place. And it was. But the funny thing was, is when we got there, they had recently had a hurricane within the last few years. At that time, this was 2019. And when we pulled up, we looked at each other and went, oh no, this cannot. It looked horrible, but they just hadn't repaired that one outside building that faces when you come in, because they had done all the repairs for the interior of what gets used the most. So it was a little bit of a freak out moment when we were like, what did we get ourselves into? But it was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. And I'll say one other thing on, because you had asked about the myths.
Hmm.
I had shared a little bit earlier about how if you book closer to, a lot of times you can
Hmm.
find better deals. A lot of people think that if you book far out, like airlines, like there's this certain window that you're supposed to book to get the best deal. But in hotels, it works by supply and demand. If they don't have people in their rooms, which is their
Hmm.
inventory, so their rooms are their inventory. If they don't have people in those rooms, then they're going to drop the price because they're going to
Hmm.
need more people. So they want to match that supply with demand. And so a lot of times during COVID times, it worked really great because everybody had a super flexible cancellation policy. It's not as blanketed anymore. But if you find a hotel that has like a little bit of a leeway in terms of their cancellation policy, so let's say, cancel 7 days before your trip and you get a full
Hmm.
refund, whatever it might be. I always tell people if like they really want to get the best deal, they can book early, but then check again last minute. I say be calm, book early, check again last minute.
Yeah.
To see if there's a better deal that exists either at that hotel or a different hotel nearby. That way you have that confidence in that, knowing that, yeah, you have a hotel, you've already done that, but you have this plan that the cancellation date, and when you can cancel by, you can check again and see if there's something even more affordable at this time and then book at that time. Because I found, 9 times out of 10, it's a much better deal closer in. Just depending,
That
but
makes a lot of sense
there
for
are
my
going to be,
analytical brain.
yeah, exactly. There are going to be those times that there's like, I also tell people, check the city calendar. So a citywide event, like a marathon, a political event, or rally, whatever it might be, that's going to bring in more people during those times, or if there's a large convention. So I always check city calendars just to see. Also,
Wow.
I don't want to go to a location that's in the middle of like a really big citywide event.
Hmm.
So I'm also just not gonna travel during that time. So I want to know that as well. But as long as there's not something really big, or it's not it's not the holidays and people are traveling a lot for the holidays, typically you're gonna get a better deal just waiting.
Mm-hmm. That's really helpful. I would have never thought of that into checking the city calendars for marathons and those types of things.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really helpful.
Yeah, good.
What about, are there maybe one or two more common myths that come up that we can debunk?
Hmm. I think we've covered the like the big ones. That kitchen one's a really big one.
Mm,
Because I do hear that one all the time, is that, well, I booked a kitchen so I can save money, but you're not actually saving money. If you really look at all your costs, if you look at the cost of the groceries, because you're still having to pay for things that you wouldn't necessarily have to pay for at home because you don't have them
hmm.
on the road, and you want to make these really good meals still. Maybe you need, I mean, I don't know, ketchup. Maybe you need ketchup. You don't need to use the whole bottle of ketchup, but what are you going to do with the ketchup after, like
Hmm.
when you leave? Then you have to pack it up, and that's a whole thing. But you have your cost of your groceries, you have the cost of the hotel that you're going to stay at that's more expensive than the hotel that didn't have the kitchen,
Hmm.
because they're going to charge more because they have that specific amenity. I
Hmm.
also, oh, another one would be to make sure that you're always looking for a hotel. There's a couple things I look for. One is a hotel with a free breakfast,
Yes.
especially as a mom with 4 kids. Like that
Hmm.
is huge. It's a huge cost saver, and it's just a really great way to like start the day. Like I
Hmm.
love as a mom that somebody else makes my food. My kids
Oh
can eat
yeah.
whatever.
Hmm.
Like I can eat whatever. It's not just a cost saving in that regard. It's also just like, this is a wonderful way to start the day together.
Oh
So
yeah.
always make sure that there's a complimentary breakfast, which a lot of hotels still offer
Hmm.
readily. And
Oh
then
yeah.
I always like to make sure there's a pool too, just because, I mean, if we can, just because that's a great free recreation activity. If I'm just,
Hmm.
because we're traveling a lot. So just to
Hmm.
make sure there's something for us to do, should it be a bad weather, like an indoor pool, bad weather, or we're just like not feeling it that day, that's a free option. What else?
I
There's
would say in terms of the free breakfast, make sure that it is complimentary, that it is a free breakfast, because we stayed at a hotel and our breakfast was free. But my mom and my grandparents stayed at a different hotel and they were surprised that their breakfast wasn't free. They had to pay like $12, I think it was. And it was very similar to our breakfast. It wasn't anything extra or anything better than what we had.
yeah.
They just had to pay for it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely
Hmm.
some hotel chains that charge you for breakfast or don't provide it at
Hmm.
all, or you have the restaurant on site that they want you to go frequent. So that's, but if you look at the cost of that, and also you can, I mean, I'm not saying this, but you can maybe snag a few snacks for the day. I
Yeah.
didn't say it, but like I know the kids love an extra milk, right? So we'll take a little extra milk up to the room. But if you look at the cost savings of that, of not having to pay for that one meal, and or just like making that your
Yes.
really big meal of the day, like you could save a lot of money just by having a hotel with a free breakfast. And they're not normally the more expensive hotels, which is ironic,
Hmm.
right? Like they're not, the
Oh
more
yeah.
expensive hotels are the ones you have to pay more money for breakfast. The less
Yes.
expensive are the ones you get free breakfast. So
Yes. We actually went to this resort hotel. My dad was able to get a deal because he knew the security guard that worked with the security company, that they got discounts.
yeah.
So they were able to, he did my dad a favor by allowing him to use that discount. And we had never been to this resort place. I think it was a Marriott or a Marriott Hill Country Resort or something in San Antonio. But everything, most of everything you had to pay extra for.
Mhm.
And we didn't know this. I mean, we knew, but when we got there, people were prepared. They had ice chests full of stuff and food, and because you could tell because they had multiple ice chests.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just the one that they traveled with. We always travel with an ice chest. So they were prepared. They did this intentionally. And when we saw that, we were like, wow, this is how people do this most of the time. If
Yeah.
they're wanting to save money or they're traveling on a budget, this is how you do it. And so we haven't, well, I we haven't been back as a family. I've been back with friends, but we kept that as a tip for next time if we do this again. Because
Yes.
those places are fun in that they usually have things to do that are included, like
Mhm.
lazy rivers and like a little beach and things. So it's fun for the kids and you don't have to go everywhere.
Right.
So that was a nice experience, but it was a learning experience as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you
Yeah.
do have to pay for
Mhm.
for those more expensive or hotels, you do have to pay for pretty much everything. And the other thing to make sure you're looking for are those resort fees, which hopefully, there's been some
Mhm.
talk about removing certain junk fees, is what they're calling them, but I don't know how that's going to go or how fast that's going to go. So resort fees would fall into that, but it is really frustrating when you get somewhere and you didn't expect that you were going to have to pay a 30 to
Mhm.
$40, especially like I just went to Vegas for a conference, and I know to look for those things. It's like, oh, this room is so cheap,
Mhm.
but also there's a $40 a night
Yes.
resort fee that you have to pay because we're going to give you free internet, which just it doesn't make sense. It's just a way for
No.
their front pack price to look more affordable, and then they're going to get you in because
Mhm.
you've already booked, you've already confirmed, and then they get those fees. So I've never agreed with resort fees, even when we're working in the industry, but it is what it is right now. So just make sure you're
Mhm.
looking at that. And then the last thing that I'll say to look at is parking. Because we went to, I think,
Mhm.
Chicago it was, and it was like I was used to cities, like we're in North Carolina, so like Asheville, Charlotte, Atlanta, they don't have super expensive parking. I mean, you're talking like maybe $20 to $30 versus when we were looking at Chicago and it was like
Mhm.
$70 to $90 a night for parking, which is just
Wow.
outrageous. And so you have to really, not really assume that
Mhm.
what about a certain thing is how it is everywhere, and always just be looking
Yes.
for those extra, because lots of times you could see Chicago and be like, okay, I know I'm gonna have to pay for parking. You could automatically assume, all right, that's $20 a night, if you don't actually look into it and say, oh, 70, that doesn't make any sense for me to stay in this area. I need to look
Yes.
elsewhere. So that would be another big one.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Colleen, for all your wealth of knowledge in this travel. If someone wanted to work with you or be in contact with you, as in getting more tips and things like that, what is the best way for them to reach you or find
Yeah.
you?
So probably on social media channels. On Instagram, I have two. We didn't get talk too much about my other business. So the one that we talked about today would be the Carswell family on Instagram. And then on TikTok, if you want to have travel tips and or learn more about Aphantasia, that one is just Colleen Carswell on
Mm.
TikTok. And then our company website, which encompasses all the businesses that we own, is carswellenterprise.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You as well.